Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing well. So I wanted to share this dream I had, and it got me to thinking about, well, a lot of things. So in the dream, to summarize, I was in this room, and it was with all these people, and I didn't really know who they were, and I had a 1-year-old in a onesie. A onesie is where they got their little legs out, and their little arms out, and the cotton shirt goes to the soldier, but their little legs are exposed. It's called a onesie. It's really cute because you can see their little cute fat legs. And the child was in a yellow onesie, and I was bouncing them on my knee. And there was like an instructor or somebody in the front talking, and they kept looking at me very meanly, right? And suddenly these alarms went off, like that kind of like apocalyptic alarm that has the red lights flashing, and it's very, very loud. And somebody came in that looked pretty scary looking, like with a very angry face, and I was bouncing the child on my knee, and I whispered to the child, it was facing forward, and I whispered in its ear, "Don't worry about angry people. Be brave against the angry face. Just ignore the angry face." And then I slowly started bouncing the child and then picking up the child and then trying to find a way to get out calmly from that emergency situation. And then I woke up from the dream. So I really started thinking about how from a young age we can teach children to remain calm during danger and to not fear an angry face, and how we need to teach children that just because someone has a smiling face doesn't mean they can't be evil. Because a lot of naive people assume that because someone smiles, that means that they're not a creep, dangerous, a liar, right? We seem to always associate a grumpy face with a bad character. Some people will say, you don't always have to be grumpy all the time. But I would argue only a crazy person smiles all the time or pretends to be happy all the time. Look at Robin Williams, for example. He was a comedian. I really liked that guy. But he always had a persona of, I'm so happy, and then he hung himself and committed suicide. So he wasn't very happy. And people were very surprised. How can this guy who was always looking happy be that full of despair? He struggled with alcoholism, and he struggled with depression. So we, as mothers, should really emphasize courage and bravery with our little ones, to the point where if they get around some people who are with a grumpy face, the child doesn't get psychologically disturbed or deterred, where he's or she is looking and gets afraid. To kind of just like, okay, you have a grumpy face, you have a grumpy face. To still keep looking at that person. And to also teach the children, don't be naive just because people are smiling and being all creepy and, with a soft tone. Because a lot of human traffickers bait children into the car with a nice soft voice. They don't just yell at the children. Sometimes they run up and snatch them, like you've seen in videos where a woman will be in the store and they just run up to her and grab her child, and she's out of shape and can't run, and someone naps her child right off the street. It does happen. But the more scarier types, I'd argue, that are more clever in the way they groom your child and bait your child, always have a smiling face and make a lot of contact, and they have nice clothes, and you don't suspect them because they don't look like the traditional Hollywood caricature of someone who would harm a child, right? It's kind of like if you had an evil doctor who's like, I'm going to give you something. And you're like, because they're always this creepy, smiling weirdo who's hiding their real emotions behind a facade, a mask of being a joker. That's someone who's smiling all the time. So that dream just got me to thinking about how even from the youngest of ages, we should teach our children bravery and to encounter situations where even if they're new in a class, how kids are good, they're new and they feel shy, but to be like, oh, go on, be brave, go on, you can have courage, don't be shy. And to also realize that you can't just hug everyone like The school counselor who I talked to the other day was saying how some children don't understand social skills to where they want to go around hugging people saying I love you, and they're touching too many people, and how that's actually dangerous because it makes the child trust too easily, when children should be more cautious of strangers and have bodily autonomy, where they're like, no, you're in my personal zone and you need to kind of step back. Not just because of the Rona, not just because of the plague that's going on, but because of actual safety reasons. Because a child should know that they have a right to say, can you please step back a bit? You're in my comfort zone. I don't feel comfortable with how close you are to me. You're a stranger. I don't really know you. And I think it's also very important to teach the little boys this, because a lot of teachers who are women, they molest the little boys, and the men make jokes. Oh, I wish I was molested by my teacher. They say some very disgusting things. But it is creepy how little boys get touched on by women and little girls get touched on by people who are supposed to be trustworthy. Like when the Catholic Church, when they get caught, when those priests get caught molesting children, they don't have a grumpy face, right? And the child doesn't realize what's happened sometimes until after the fact, till they feel very weird and strange. But if you teach the child from a very young age to say, hey, this is my space, you don't have a right to touch me on my body, and I don't have to hug you because you're trying to greet me. If you want to greet me, you can say Assalamu alaikum, and you can, you don't have to always have physical contact to greet somebody. Especially now, people are doing the elbow thing. They're not really doing the handshake embracements anymore. But safety and bravery in the face of a chaotic situation is a very valuable skill for children. Children who do mixed martial arts, my little one has been in martial arts training since she was 3 years old. They have a bit of an awareness of the control of their body and what to do if someone's trying to do something to them that they don't feel comfortable with. And that a child has a right to say, I don't feel comfortable with you being this close to me. I don't feel comfortable with you in my vicinity. And a little girl and boy being able to verbalize to somebody, you're in my comfort zone, you are a stranger, I don't know you, step back. But to also even say the same thing about their cousins and such, because a big portion of little girls are even molested by their own fathers, right? So, or their uncles. It's usually a cousin, an uncle, or their father. And this is quite sad, and the data shows. The crime statistics show this, okay? So, even if it's a family member, a child needs to understand their bodily autonomy and be brave enough to verbalize what's happening and to be able to run away, punch, bite, escape until they can get to an adult. Because as the world gets more and more hedonistic, and as children are being targeted with younger and younger sexual education, we need to prepare them. There was one school, I don't know if it was Michigan or it was a Democrat state, but they were putting condoms on the office for 10-year-olds, where 10-year-olds were around. So at 10 years old, they're putting that image into the kid's head. And this is almost like a sort of grooming. They call it sex education, but it feels like a sort of grooming. And more TV shows are showing little girls in scantily clothing at younger and younger ages, and more mothers are becoming less aware, perceptive, and protective over their kids, right? You have drag queen nights where Desmond, amazing Desmond, is this little, it's a boy who says he's a girl, trans kid, does these dances on a stripper pole, and grown men throw money at him, and liberals are saying it's okay because he's expressing his sexuality. So even if that's a niche example, you can perceive the way in which certain ideologies are heading in terms of what they are allowing to be shown to children and how parents, even if they are trying, cannot keep back everything. We cannot be around 24/7. Their evil sneaks in anytime. Okay? So if we teach our children from very young ages to be brave, to understand their sovereignty in terms of, hey, you could step back, you don't have a right to touch me, you don't have a right to get near me, I have a right to declare that you should back up a bit, and to be brave enough to do that, we can change so much abuse from happening, and we could make our kids more smart and aware. I once heard a story too. A little adorable black girl, she was kidnapped, and her nappers, they tied her up and they left her in a room. She figured out how to undo her ropes that were on her wrists and ankles. She climbed out of the window, knew her parents' phone number, I think she was like 8 or 7, and was able to call the police and get her and get home. But then they had other stories where, people who were older and they were teens, when they were kidnapped or trafficked, it was harder for them to have the bravery to speak up and troubleshoot on how to escape from the situation. So I wish I would have kept that girl's story, but it was a while ago, like 5 years ago. What a hero. I mean, very inspiring. A brave little girl was able to escape her kidnappers. So bravery for little girls and boys is important, and I really think it's never too young to start teaching them about, you have a right to tell someone to back up. No one has a right to put their hands on you at all, no matter who they are, right? So let me know what you think. It was a very interesting dream, and it really had an impact on my day, because I was just really meditating upon it, philosophizing upon it, and examining what that could mean in its own sense. But I really do think that we have to start preparing our children for the future, especially as, normal boundaries of what children should be exposed to are being removed. And a lot of people know how to get around censorship firewalls, so even if you protect your kid with everything you think you can, evil constantly finds a way to get back into the sanctuary. So we must prepare.